Growing up in a blended family had always been a unique experience for me. My father, a middle-aged man with an easygoing demeanor, had remarried a few years back, and with that came my stepsister, Lily. She was just a year younger than I was, and at first glance, it felt like adding a new chapter to our family story rather than rewriting the entire book. Our initial interactions were filled with awkward introductions and tentative attempts to bond over shared interests, music, movies, and the occasional video game. However, despite these efforts, there always seemed to be an invisible line between us that neither of us dared to cross. Lily was different from me in many ways. She had a carefree spirit and an open heart that drew people in. I often found myself retreating into quieter corners of our home. While I appreciated her vibrant personality, it sometimes felt like she drew attention away from my quieter nature. Yet, I admired her ability to make friends easily, something I struggled with. Our father tried his best to create harmony within our new family unit. He often organized weekend outings or movie nights to foster connection among us. But even with these activities designed to bring us closer together, I sensed an undercurrent of tension building between Lily and my dad that I couldn't quite put my finger on, something unspoken yet palpable. As time went on, I began noticing subtle shifts in their interactions during these family gatherings. It wasn't anything overtly alarming initially, perhaps a fleeting glance or an oddly timed laugh. There were moments when they seemed to share private jokes or whispered conversations that made me feel like an outsider looking in. Sometimes it felt as though they were communicating in a language I wasn't privy to, a secret code that excluded me from their little world. In our garage, once just a place for old tools and forgotten boxes, something shifted in its atmosphere. It began as an ordinary space filled with bicycles and gardening equipment, but somehow transformed into a backdrop for something more intimate and strange. The garage door became the threshold between familiarity and mystery. On one particularly humid afternoon, after another unsuccessful attempt at coaxing Lily into joining me for a game of cards, I wandered aimlessly down the hall toward the garage. The sounds emanating from within caught my attention, a mix of muffled laughter and hushed whispers that sent my curiosity into overdrive. My heart raced slightly. There was no reason for them to sound so conspiratorial. As I approached the door, I had every intention of simply peeking in, but something held me back momentarily. Perhaps it was the instinctive urge to respect their privacy, or maybe just apprehension about what I might find inside, but ultimately my curiosity got the better of me. I creaked open the door ever so slightly, enough to get a glimpse without being detected. What unfolded before me was both baffling and unsettling. Lily leaned against one of the workbenches while Dad stood closely beside her with his hands resting on its edge. Their faces were inches apart as they shared some sort of inside joke that seemed to transcend the mundane reality around them. Lily's laughter turned melodic as she playfully nudged him with her shoulder. It felt too intimate for comfort, the kind of connection you might expect from close friends rather than siblings or step-siblings. In that moment, it hit me. This wasn't just playful banter between family members. There was something inherently different about how they interacted. My breath hitched as confusion mingled with anxiety. I should have turned back right then. Instead, I remained frozen in place. My dad's laughter joined hers, a deep rumble tinged with warmth. But even as he smiled down at her, something within me screamed that this wasn't how things were meant to be between them. There was familiarity there, a comfort level that made my stomach churn as doubts crept into my mind. Why did it feel wrong? Wasn't this just another day in our blended family? As they continued their exchange oblivious to my presence outside, instead wrapped up in their own little bubble, I felt like an intruder upon something sacred yet troubling. I stepped back quietly from the door before retreating completely down the hall, but not before catching one last glimpse, a snapshot imprinted forever in my mind. Two people who seemed too close for comfort sharing laughter and secrets while creating distance between themselves and me. The unease settled heavily on my chest as uncertainty loomed over what would happen next. How would we navigate this new territory? Questions flooded my mind faster than I could process them all, questions about boundaries, relationships, trust, and most importantly, who did I turn to now? The day it happened started off like any other summer afternoon, the sun hanging high in a cloudless sky, with an almost oppressive heat that seemed to wrap around the house like a thick blanket. The air felt still, weighed down by the humidity that seeped through the walls and made even the simplest tasks feel laborious. I remember the cicadas buzzing loudly in the background, their incessant droning a constant reminder of the season's heat. My father had decided that today was a good day for some family bonding. He popped into my room early, enthusiasm bubbling over, suggesting a backyard barbecue later that evening. He had already begun marinating some chicken and planned to fire up the grill as soon as the sun began to dip below the horizon. His excitement was infectious, but it also felt somewhat misplaced given the strange energy crackling between Lily and him lately. I ventured downstairs, where I found Lily sprawled out on the couch in the living room, earbuds in, completely absorbed in whatever podcast was playing. Her presence always seemed larger than life. She filled spaces with her laughter and quick jokes. Yet today, despite her usual vivaciousness, there was an odd stillness about her. "Hey, are you ready to help set things up for later?" I asked casually as I rifled through drawers to find our trusty old picnic blanket and some utensils. She pulled one earbud out slowly and gave me a half-smile. In a bit, just letting my brain rest, she replied with a hint of distraction in her voice that struck a discordant note in me. Usually so engaged and talkative, today she seemed distant and uninterested. I glanced at her, but didn't press further. Part of me was still grappling with my own feelings of unease stemming from their previous interactions. Instead, I headed outside to gather everything we might need for the barbecue. Chairs from storage, plates from our kitchen cabinets, and drinks from inside. As I set everything up under our old oak tree, memories flickered through my mind of past summer days spent laughing with friends and family gathered around our grill. But today felt different. Something tangible hung in the air, a mixture of anticipation and discomfort that I couldn't shake off. Throughout the morning, my dad moved around energetically in preparation for dinner while frequently calling out to me for advice on side dishes or cooking times. There were moments when he would pause mid-task to glance toward Lily's space as if expecting her to join us or contribute to our plans. Each time he did so, I noticed her retreat further into her world. She would laugh at something on her phone or return to scrolling through social media without looking up. By early afternoon, as the sun reached its peak and sweat dripped down my forehead, I decided I needed a break from setting up. I wandered back inside for some water just as Dad emerged from his workshop adjoining the garage, a small space filled with tools and remnants of projects long abandoned, but still somehow enchanting to me. He spotted me standing there and suggested we check on Lily together. "Lily, you want to come help us out?" Dad called out gently but with an underlying strain of hopefulness that she would reintegrate into our plans. There was no immediate response. Instead, silence stretched on uncomfortably until we finally heard her voice drifting from down the hallway. "I'll be out later." It wasn't particularly dismissive but lacked any zest. This wasn't like her at all. As Dad turned back toward the garage with concern etched across his features, my instincts kicked in again. The tone of those words weighed heavier than they should have. It wasn't just Lily's unusual behavior weighing on my mind. There was something else brewing beneath the surface between them. Something not right about their relationship that made me anxious each time they shared even brief moments together. After sipping my water and considering sliding back outside for fresh air, I looked toward the garage without thinking twice about it. The door was cracked open just enough for me to catch glimpses of movement inside. A lingering shadow shifted against dusty shelves stacked high with tools and materials. Just then, dark clouds began creeping into view as storm fronts rolled in quietly. Thunder rumbled softly in the distance as though nature sensed my growing turmoil. With this change in weather came an additional layer of tension that settled hard within me. I wouldn't let myself ignore what lay ahead any longer. With rain gathering momentum outside and ominous skies darkening above us all too quickly for comfort, I could feel change looming like collective uncertainty, that palpable feeling simmering just beneath everyday existence's awaited eruption. A breaking point soon approaching where everything could shift dramatically forevermore. As the afternoon wore on, the dense air grew thicker with an unshakable tension. I busied myself with barbecue preparations, but my thoughts kept drifting back to Lily and how her behavior around Dad had evolved into something that felt foreign and unsettling. It wasn't just her distant demeanor this particular day. It was a culmination of moments that had been accumulating over time, each one a small brushstroke painting a larger, disturbing picture. I first noticed the change a few weeks prior during our family movie night. Instead of snuggling into the couch like her usual self, Lily had opted for the armchair across the room, her posture stiff and defensive. When Dad made one of his trademark jokes, light-hearted jabs meant to elicit laughter, she offered nothing more than a fleeting smirk before diverting her attention back to her phone. Her eyes darted away from him almost as if she found it uncomfortable to maintain any form of prolonged contact. That evening replayed in my mind as I prepared for the barbecue. Dad had been genuinely trying to engage her, pulling conversation from thin air by asking about school or friends. In those moments, it was as if they were sharing an invisible divide. While he animatedly spoke with gestures and expressions that oriented solely toward her, she remained half-turned away, her body language shrunk inward. A clear rejection of his attempts to connect. Even during dinner prep earlier in the day, I could see subtle cues that indicated something was amiss between them. At one point, Dad asked Lily to help him slice vegetables for the grilling session later on. She responded with an exaggerated sigh and half-heartedly grabbed the cutting board before plopping down at the kitchen table rather heavily, almost defiantly. The lack of enthusiasm stood out starkly against my dad's cheerful demeanor as he whistled while preparing marinades and seasoning blends. Their interactions were peppered with an awkwardness I couldn't ignore. Each response from Lily seemed mechanical, devoid of warmth or genuine interest. When Dad asked simple questions about what she'd been up to lately, typical inquiries meant to bridge gaps, her answers came brief and clipped, barely breaking the surface of conversation. Just hanging out, she would say, or it's fine, when pressed further about school projects or friends' escapades. Whenever he attempted humor to lighten the mood or draw her in closer, there was an unmistakable tension that followed, a restrained laugh from Lily accompanied by a quick roll of her eyes. She would momentarily meet his gaze before hurriedly looking away, as though the weight of eye contact was too much for her in those moments. It marked a sharp contrast to how she used to engage with him openly, sharing laughs back and forth as siblings often do. Underneath all this were fleeting glances exchanged between them that set off alarm bells within me, the kind where you could sense lingering emotions holding sway beneath their playful banner. A glance too long could spark feelings that neither wanted to acknowledge. Sometimes they would communicate silently in ways that felt charged yet unspoken, a tension rapidly escalating beneath layers of normalcy. At one point during lunch preparation, I caught my father brushing his fingertips gently against Lily's arm when handing her a pile of napkins. It seemed innocuous enough, a simple gesture, but why did it leave me feeling unsettled? I noticed how Lily flinched ever so slightly at his touch. It was subtle, but enough for me to take notice. Her eyes widened briefly before she regained composure and quickly pulled away as if burning from some imaginary flame ignited by such closeness. As I observed them interacting under those familiar conditions, cutting veggies together while music played softly in the background, I became increasingly aware of how their relationship no longer mirrored what I believed it should be. There were hesitations layered into their exchanges that felt disjointed. These weren't two people merely enjoying each other's company, but rather individuals caught in a dance where lines were blurred, unfamiliar patterns emerging without clear explanations. Finally, noticing a change within our home dynamics wasn't merely about recognizing discomfort. It was also about grappling with confusion surrounding trust itself. Did Lily feel safe around Dad anymore? Was there something unresolved between them laid bare beneath everyday interactions like these? These questions haunted me each time they exchanged looks laden with unexpressed thoughts, their unsaid words echoing louder than their spoken ones. And yet, standing amidst all this uncertainty, part of me clung desperately to hope, the notion that perhaps we could navigate through whatever storm awaited us ahead, still yearning for reconnection even amid chaos brewing quietly beneath our roof. The garage held a peculiar significance in our family life, serving as both a practical space and a repository for memories, both cherished and unsettling. It was modest in size, yet its walls seemed to cradle secrets between the relaxed atmosphere of family gatherings and the underlying tensions that sometimes brewed beneath the surface. With peeling paint and mismatched shelves, it felt like an extension of our home, but one that was often overlooked. Typically, our garage was a chaotic blend of old tools, forgotten projects, and half-finished crafts. Dad had claimed it as his workshop, a sanctuary where he could immerse himself in DIY tasks or tinker with ideas that danced around his mind. You could find an array of items strewn about, dusty boxes stuffed with bike parts, empty paint cans gathering cobwebs in the corners, and worn-out lawn chairs stacked haphazardly against one wall. Each object had its own story, a testament to days spent working on projects under the sun or gatherings with friends fueled by laughter and grilled food. During those earlier family times, the garage had been a hub of excitement and creativity. I remembered countless afternoons filled with the sound of hammering as Dad guided me through small repairs or fun builds, like making birdhouses or fixing up our bikes. The scent of sawdust mingled with the warm air, adding to the allure of this makeshift workshop where we'd collaborate on simple projects that fostered bonding through shared accomplishment. Yet now it felt different. The light streaming through the two small windows cast shadows that were almost heavier than usual, emphasizing the growing sense of secrecy that had developed between Dad and Lily. These days, conversations within the garage felt hushed. Moments shared there no longer had the exuberance they once did. The laughter that used to echo off its walls was stifled into whispers, the warmth replaced by an uncomfortable distance that made me feel like an outsider even in my own home. As I glanced toward the garage door while waiting for Lily to emerge for dinner preparations, I noticed how it creaked slightly on its hinges, a surprisingly loud sound against the backdrop of cicadas buzzing outside. It stood ajar just enough for fleeting glimpses inside, an invitation that felt laden with unspoken tension. What went on behind those doors? I couldn't shake the feeling that something significant was happening between them, coiling tightly in that confined space away from prying eyes. In my imagination, I pictured them standing too close together, the kind of closeness weighing heavily on my chest like a stone. The shelves lined with tools lined up as sentinels harkened back to simpler times when our family dynamics felt unwavering and steadfast. But now they bore witness to new interactions marked by tentative gestures and nervous laughter exchanged behind closed doors. The dim light within cast unusual shadows across their faces, shadows that hinted at hidden emotions lying just below the surface. It made me wonder what conversations transpired there when I wasn't around. Were they sharing intimate thoughts disguised as casual talk? Or were there unacknowledged tensions lurking in every brush of fingertips over tools passed from hand to hand? Each interaction seemed charged with a deeper current I couldn't quite decipher. There were times when Lily would venture into the garage alone, seeking refuge from family chaos perhaps. But what transpired during those moments remained cloaked in mystery. Did she feel at ease enough to explore her relationship with Dad without fear of judgment or interruption? Yet each time she left, I sensed a lingering hesitance wrapped around her movements. An untold gravity tied to what lay within those walls stifled her free spirit in unexpected ways. With ominous clouds forming overhead outside, mirroring my internal turmoil, any hopes for simple familial joy faded into uncertainty amid these peculiar happenings. Would this garage once again transform from a place teeming with creativity into just another corner harboring secrets, or could it become a bridge mending frayed ties? Ultimately, those very walls had witnessed triumphs and tensions alike. Father-daughter connections forged over wooden frames alongside frayed edges left unresolved. As thunder rumbled softly in the approaching storm above us, I realized this enclosure would serve as more than a backdrop. It would be a silent narrator for whatever dark drama unfolded within its confines. Would we allow such mysteries hidden inside to unravel freely as we dared to confront them head-on? As the afternoon wore on and the storm clouds loomed closer, an inexplicable pull urged me toward the garage. My heart raced as I stood at the threshold, hesitating for a moment to gather my thoughts. The atmosphere was thick with apprehension, and I felt as though I were crossing an invisible barrier into a realm where secrets danced just out of sight. The garage door, slightly ajar, whispered promises of hidden truths and unspoken exchanges that had been brewing between Lily and Dad. Curiosity gripped me tightly, mingling with a sense of dread that made every step feel heavy. Why did I want to look? What was it that compelled me? Questions swirled in my mind, battling against one another as I approached the entrance quietly. As if any sudden movement might shatter the fragile piece hanging in the air, I tiptoed closer, my breath hitching as I caught glimpses of their silhouettes through the crack in the door. In that moment, I oscillated between wanting to know and fearing what I might discover. How had it come to this? The normality of our family gatherings felt like a distant memory, replaced by an unsettling tension that now felt almost palpable. Each step felt like a leap into the unknown. I could sense the swirling storm outside mirroring my inner turmoil, an inevitable clash between curiosity and anxiety. Peeking through the door, my pulse quickened as I tried to make sense of what lay before me. The dim light within cast shadows that danced across the cluttered workbench, where tools lay scattered amidst remnants of unfinished projects. But it was them, their closeness, that held me captive. Dad stood close to Lily, their bodies angled towards each other, engaging in conversation that appeared intimate yet charged with an unexplained weight. A knot formed in my stomach as I watched closely. Lily's laughter rang out softly, but there was something about it that felt forced or stilted. Her body language contradicted her words. Despite her apparent amusement, she leaned back slightly as if bracing herself against something. Anxiety washed over me like a cold tide. What were they discussing? Was there more behind those smiles that met the eye? I strained to catch snippets of their conversation, but their words remained muffled, trapped within those four walls like secrets begging to escape. My heart raced with uncertainty. Should I confront them? Was this simply innocent banter between a father and daughter? Or was it something deeper lurking beneath the surface? The more I observed, the more confused I became. My perspective shifted from mere curiosity into something darker, a fear that perhaps their relationship had evolved into something unsettlingly intimate. Would he ever look at her this way if she weren't his daughter? A familiar ache settled into my chest as jealousy mingled with concern. It felt wrong to think such thoughts about people who were supposed to be my family. My instinct screamed at me to retreat, to pull away from this moment before it spiraled out of control. Yet I couldn't tear my gaze away. There was an undeniable compulsion drawing me closer even as dread coiled tighter around my heart. Every laugh exchanged was laced with a tension only I seemed to perceive, a tension breaking apart our familial bond little by little. As they shared another laugh, a sound tinged with both warmth and discomfort, I felt frozen between wanting clarity and fearing its consequences. Would understanding bring relief or amplify my unease? And then there it was. Dad reached out again, brushing his fingers lightly against Lily's arm as he made a playful comment about one of their projects from earlier in the week. It was just a touch, but it sent shockwaves through me. A rush of emotions cascaded over me as realization hit. This wasn't merely a playful exchange, but rather something charged with implications far beyond innocent familial affection. All at once, I became acutely aware of how small actions could carry enormous weight, the way fingers lingered too long on skin, or how laughter could mask deeper feelings waiting to erupt from under layers of unspoken words. My heart thudded loudly in my chest as wave after wave of confusion crashed over me. How had everything shifted so dramatically without any warning signs? Just then, thunder rumbled above us, a sharp reminder that storm clouds had gathered not just outside but within our family dynamics too. Stepping back slightly from the door, my mind raced with questions about loyalty and boundaries. How much longer could we ignore what lay beneath this facade of normalcy? Caught between creeping anxiety and bewildering curiosity, I weighed my next move carefully. This moment bore significance far beyond mere observation. It could change everything we understood about our family dynamics forever. As I held my breath, peering through the narrow gap of the garage door, the scene inside unfolded like a slow-motion film, each detail sharpening my sense of dread. Dad and Lily stood close together, bathed in the soft glow of the overhead light that cast long shadows across the cluttered workbench. The atmosphere was charged, filled with an energy that felt both electric and unsettling. Dad was holding a small wooden birdhouse they had been working on together, a project I had seen them tackle days earlier. He turned it in his hands, inspecting their progress with an air of pride. "You did a great job on this part," he said, his voice warm and encouraging. "I knew you had it in you." Lily's response was almost immediate, but her demeanor caught me off guard. Instead of beaming with pride, she shrugged her shoulders and looked away, her gaze drifting toward a pile of discarded materials in the corner. "Yeah, well, it's not like it's that hard," she replied dismissively, her tone lacking enthusiasm and betraying an underlying tension. Dad seemed to sense her reluctance. He leaned closer, trying to bridge the growing distance between them. "Come on, you know how much I appreciate your help," he coaxed gently. His hand brushed against her arm as he gestured toward the birdhouse again. The touch was light but lingered just a moment too long for comfort. In that instant, something within me twisted painfully. It felt intimate in a way that shouldn't exist between them. Lily flinched slightly at his touch, but quickly masked it with a forced smile. "Thanks," she muttered, though her eyes darted away from his, betraying an internal conflict I couldn't quite grasp. The laughter and warmth Dad sought were met with resistance, a tension hanging heavy in the air between them. "Do you think we should paint it?" Dad asked enthusiastically, trying to reignite some spark in their interaction. "We could do some cool colors. Maybe even your favorite blue." He grinned broadly, clearly eager to engage her imagination. But instead of reciprocating his excitement, Lily's expression hardened. Her lips pressed into a thin line as she crossed her arms tightly over her chest, a defensive posture that told me all I needed to know about how she felt at that moment. "I don't really care," she replied tersely, her voice lacking any warmth or interest. The contrast between Dad's hopeful demeanor and Lily's withdrawal struck me like a slap in the face. It was as if they were speaking two different languages, his full of affection and encouragement while hers was laced with irritation and disinterest. I watched closely as he attempted to remain buoyant despite her responses. Every cheerful comment seemed to bounce off her like water off a duck's back. "Hey," he said gently after a pause, his tone shifting slightly as if sensing the weight pressing down between them. "If it's not fun for you anymore." "I just don't want to do this right now," she interrupted sharply, cutting him off mid-sentence. The edge in her voice was startlingly clear, an indication of simmering frustration beneath the surface. In that moment, I felt a rush of conflicting emotions. Confusion morphed into concern as I observed this strange dynamic unfolding before me. Were they truly having a disagreement over something so trivial? Or was there something deeper festering beneath their exchange? My chest tightened further as anger and jealousy intertwined within me. I wanted so desperately for things to return to how they used to be. Dad sighed softly, but quickly composed himself again. There was an undeniable sadness in his eyes as he glanced at her. "I understand," he said quietly, pulling back slightly as if conceding defeat. "But I'm here if you want to talk about anything, or if you want to paint." Lily shifted uncomfortably at his words. I could see how deeply conflicted she was about this conversation, her brow furrowing slightly as she stared at the ground before looking up again at him with uncertainty flickering across her features. But then something shifted. A flicker of vulnerability crossed Lily's face before she regained composure again. It vanished just as quickly as it appeared. "I'll just finish my homework later," she mumbled almost dismissively before turning towards the exit. My heart sank as comprehension washed over me. Their interaction had devolved into something tinged with disappointment and unfulfilled expectations rather than joyful collaboration. This wasn't merely playful banter. There were layers of complexity buried under every word spoken between them, layers that hinted at unresolved feelings lingering uncomfortably within our blended family framework. As Lily moved toward the door where I stood hidden from view, I felt panic rise within me like bile. I had witnessed something raw and real that shattered my childhood perceptions of familial love into pieces scattered across this garage floor like forgotten tools awaiting repair. What had begun as innocent curiosity morphed into an urgent need for answers. What lay behind those walls would ultimately change everything I thought I understood about our family dynamics forever. As Lily turned and walked toward the garage door, I felt an overwhelming wave of shock wash over me. It was as if I had stumbled upon a hidden truth that I wasn't meant to see, something dark and unsettling lurking just beneath the surface of our seemingly normal family life. My heart raced as confusion blended with disbelief, forcing me to grapple with this new reality I had inadvertently uncovered. I pressed my back against the wall, heart pounding, struggling to process everything I had just witnessed. The warmth that once enveloped our family gatherings felt like it had been replaced by a chilling draft, leaving me shivering in its wake. Anxiety coiled in my stomach like a tightly wound spring. I wanted to retreat from the truth but felt equally compelled to confront it. My mind raced through a whirlwind of thoughts and questions that refused to settle. How could the interactions between Dad and Lily have shifted so drastically? The moments that had once been filled with creativity and laughter now seemed like they were steeped in something darker and more complex. Why didn't Lily feel comfortable expressing her feelings? Was there something more significant at play that I hadn't seen before? Doubts began to creep into my mind about the boundaries of familial love. Were they slowly unraveling right before my eyes? I took a shaky breath, trying to steady myself, but every inhalation felt heavy with unvoiced concerns. Witnessing their interaction had ignited a sense of urgency within me, forcing me to confront feelings I hadn't allowed myself to acknowledge until now. The familiar rhythms of our blended family felt shattered beneath the weight of unspoken truths. It scared me deeply. I couldn't shake images from my mind, the way Dad had reached out to touch Lily's arm, the way her smile had faltered, and the sharpness in her voice when she dismissed him. Each moment played out like a haunting echo that reverberated within me. This wasn't mere sibling rivalry or typical teenage angst. It was layered with something intricately painful that felt beyond my comprehension. Worry gnawed at me relentlessly. I couldn't just sit back and let this go unnoticed. Couldn't allow myself to dismiss these peculiar exchanges as teen drama or simply some phase they were going through. No, there was too much at stake, too many emotions entangled in this web of confusion. What if I didn't act? Would I be complicit in ignoring something vital that needed addressing? The storm clouds outside mirrored my internal turmoil, rumbling softly as if echoing my fears, an ominous connection to the chaos brewing within our family unit. I took a step back, closer to the doorframe, where shadows mingled with the dim light spilling from inside. I could still hear snippets of their conversation floating back to me, words heavy with unfulfilled expectations and faint hopes, but I felt frozen in place, caught between curiosity and dread. What would happen if I confronted them? Would I shatter whatever fragile piece they were clinging to? Or would unveiling the truth offer clarity? A part of me longed for answers while another part feared what those answers might reveal. As much as I wanted to protect our family dynamic, how could I turn a blind eye to emerging cracks? Those crevices intensified my desire for understanding. Suddenly, I recalled memories of our old family barbecues, the times we laughed together without hesitation, shared stories over grilled food, and felt connected as a unit. Those memories fueled a deep-seated yearning for reconciliation among us all. Could the love we once shared be salvaged from this tension? Or had we crossed some unseen threshold that would forever alter our relationships? I closed my eyes for a brief moment, feeling overwhelmed by emotion. My chest tightened with anxiety as tears threatened to spill over. Uncertainty clawed at my insides as I considered what lay ahead. It was now clear. Changes were unfolding before me that could redefine everything I knew about trust and connection within our family. What if confronting them brought about confrontation instead of resolution? Would exposing this rift lead to deeper divisions? Yet silence felt equally perilous. Ignoring this growing estrangement would only widen the gap between us, a schism that could tear apart the very fabric of our collective experience. As I finally peeled my eyes open again, determination surged within me. It was time to act. If we pushed through this dark chapter together, perhaps we could emerge stronger on the other side. But first, I needed answers. I needed to understand what was really brewing beneath the currents of our familial bonds. With resolve strengthening my trembling limbs, I decided that tomorrow would mark a turning point, not just for me, but perhaps for all of us. We needed to face whatever lay behind those closed doors head-on. A conversation fueled by honesty and openness must take center stage if we were ever going to reclaim our connection as a family again. The night after witnessing the uncomfortable exchange between Lily and Dad hung heavily in the air like dark clouds, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. I lay awake in bed, my mind an endless loop of thoughts swirling around my head, replaying every moment I had observed in the garage. The shadows of doubt loomed large as I weighed my options. Should I confront Lily, speak to Dad, or simply let it all be? Part of me craved action. I felt a restless urgency to address what had transpired. Confrontation held an allure. It was straightforward, decisive. If I approached Lily directly, perhaps we could break through this strange barrier and uncover the truth behind her behavior. But a nagging doubt festered within me. Would she react defensively? Would she brush me off, or worse, would she become angry for intruding on something that felt deeply personal? The idea of confronting Dad was equally daunting. He was, after all, my father, the one person I had always turned to for guidance and support. Yet how could I face him with these concerns without seeming accusatory? My instincts told me that any challenge to the fragility of his bond with Lily might backfire. After all, they were sharing moments together that seemed to mean something to both of them, even if those moments made me uncomfortable. Caught in this whirlwind of emotion, not knowing which path might lead to clarity, I reflected on what trust and loyalty meant in our family unit. Growing up in a blended family meant navigating complex relationships. Each day was an exercise in understanding and adaptation. My loyalty to Dad compelled me to protect him from facing uncomfortable questions about his relationship with Lily, yet my bond with Lily urged me to advocate for her, to help her find her voice. It felt like an impossible balancing act. I considered what had driven me to observe their interactions in the first place, the need for understanding wrapped tightly around a core of concern. Trust had always been a cornerstone of our family values. It was essential if we were to remain connected through adversity. Yet now that trust was being tested in ways I had never anticipated. It wasn't just about bridging the gap between siblings, it was about challenging the sanctity of familial bonds themselves. If I chose confrontation without tact, would I risk severing ties rather than mending them? Unable to shake off feelings of anxiety and apprehension entirely, I found myself leaning more toward reflection than confrontation. That morning at breakfast, I sat across from Dad and Lily at the kitchen table while trying to sense their mood, searching for clues that hinted at their emotional states this time around. The usual lightheartedness felt strangely absent as they exchanged polite smiles, but little else. Lily focused intently on her plate while Dad tapped his fingers lightly against the table. I wanted nothing more than to bridge this chasm of silence between us, to ask them both what had shifted so dramatically overnight, but uncertainty held my tongue captive. Instead, I picked at my toast mechanically while wrestling with inner turmoil over whether my suspicions were misguided or justified. After finishing breakfast, I decided on a different approach, one rooted not in confrontation but rather in direct inquiry. Perhaps fostering conversations about lighter topics could loosen those invisible strings tightening around us all. By creating an environment where both Dad and Lily could express themselves freely, without pressure or expectation, I hoped some form of healing might naturally emerge. Later that evening, while setting up for the barbecue outside, under low-hanging branches swaying gently against a warm breeze, an opportunity materialized when Dad suggested we make our own toppings for burgers. With him standing close by as he grabbed ingredients from the fridge, I turned to Lily and said playfully, "How about we make it a competition? Whoever creates the best burger topping wins bragging rights." Her lips curled slightly at the corners as she looked up from her phone, not quite reaching full joy, but enough for me to see rays of familiarity flash through her eyes once again. "Fine," she responded with mock defiance. but you'll be crying when mine tastes way better." Laughter emerged unexpectedly from Dad as he chimed in with playful banter that soon filled our surroundings, a reminder of the camaraderie we'd once shared as a family. Slowly but surely they engaged again, our conversation swirling around toppings turned into friendly jabs over past culinary fails, bits and pieces of their natural rapport creeping out from under layers previously dulled by tension. As warmth spread through our gathering after being fractured by uncertainty only hours prior, hope began unfurling within me like petals opening towards sunlight. Could this simple evening ritual serve as a balm for whatever had wounded our dynamic? Maybe healing didn't have to come through confrontation after all. Perhaps rebuilding trust also meant embracing those small moments together until space cleared enough for deeper discussions down the line. With each laugh shared beneath twilight skies illuminating our backyard banquet grounds, light broke through isolation's shroud. It whispered assurances that change wasn't beyond reach, and trust could still triumph amid uncertainty. In the days and weeks that followed the incident in the garage, the atmosphere within our home shifted subtly yet significantly. It was as if a thin veil had been pulled back, revealing the undercurrents of emotion that had long simmered beneath our family's surface. While we attempted to move forward with a semblance of normalcy, it became increasingly clear that the dynamics within our blended family were evolving in ways I hadn't fully anticipated. At first, I noticed a tentative shift in our interactions. Dad seemed more attuned to the nuances of Lily's moods. He would often check in on her when she retreated into her room or spend extra time engaging her with light-hearted conversations during meals. His efforts felt genuine, but at times they also bordered on overly cautious, as if he were treading carefully on fragile ground. I could see him wrestling with his own uncertainty about how to bridge the gap created by that day. Lily, on the other hand, wore her emotions like armor, defensive and withdrawn one moment, then unexpectedly open and playful the next. She would sometimes engage with Dad during family dinners but often return to her phone or laptop afterward, creating barriers reminiscent of those early days after their marriage when she had still been figuring out her place in our family. Her laughter occasionally erupted from behind closed doors when she was with friends, leaving me to wonder whether those moments were just facades hiding deeper complexities. As for my own role in this evolving dynamic, I felt caught between my loyalty to both Dad and Lily. There were times when I wanted to reach out to Lily and ask if she was okay, if she needed someone to talk to, but apprehension held me back. Would she see my inquiry as prying? Would it push her further away? And with Dad, there was an inherent desire to protect him from any feelings of guilt or discomfort regarding his relationship with Lily. I didn't want to risk shattering his fragile confidence in navigating these new waters. The barbecue we hosted after that tense day served as a temporary balm for our fraught relationships. In its aftermath, however, the warmth we shared began to dissipate like smoke from extinguished coals. It became evident that while laughter briefly thawed ice between us, it couldn't erase the underlying tension that remained unaddressed. As summer progressed into fall and school routines resumed, I found myself reflecting more deeply on what I had observed in the garage that day. The incident weighed heavily on my mind. It forced me to confront uncomfortable questions about trust and loyalty within our family structure. Were we genuinely addressing issues that threatened our bond? Or were we merely postponing inevitable conversations by sticking to surface-level interactions? In quieter moments alone, I pondered whether confronting them both together would bring clarity or deepen divisions instead. I considered how each member of our family navigated their feelings differently. Dad's earnest attempts at connection clashed against Lily's oscillation between withdrawal and bursts of engagement. My own uncertainty compounded these complexities. As much as I wanted to facilitate healing, I feared stepping too far into territory laden with emotional landmines. Eventually, it became clear that avoidance wouldn't lead us anywhere productive. We needed openness about what had transpired and where we stood now. One evening after dinner, when the three of us were seated on the porch with mugs of warm cocoa in hand, I felt a surge of courage bubbling within me. "Can we talk about something?" I began tentatively, feeling all eyes on me as their expression shifted from relaxed enjoyment to cautious curiosity. "Sure," Dad replied first, his brows furrowing slightly as he set down his mug. I glanced over at Lily before continuing. Her body language indicated mixed emotions, a defensive posture, but also a glimmer of eagerness for clarity among lingering ambiguity. "I think we should discuss what happened in the garage." Their reactions varied. Dad appeared slightly stunned yet attentive, while Lily's eyes widened momentarily before narrowing in suspicion, a mixture of trepidation and readiness hanging thickly between us. "I've been thinking about how things have changed since then," I continued cautiously, "and how it seems like there's this tension that just hasn't gone away. Dad shifted uneasily in his seat while Lily remained quiet for a heartbeat longer than expected before finally responding. "It has been weird," she admitted softly, the vulnerability in her voice breaking through layers of uncertainty at once. We began delving into discussions fueled by honesty rather than defensiveness. Together we explored emotions too easily buried beneath laughter and affection, an honest reflection illuminating crevices where shadows had lurked so long. With each exchanged thought came a gradual understanding. A collective acknowledgement that none of us had intended harm but rather struggled together through complex feelings surrounding trust and connection amidst turmoil over familial bonds strained along unexpected lines. In opening this dialogue among ourselves so completely, it felt as if we collectively released pent-up pressure weighing down our hearts all summer long, a release capable of rebuilding bridges once thought irreparably fractured. As this conversation unfolded under stars twinkling above us like promises yet fulfilled, hope blossomed anew among all three of us. It whispered subtle promises that healing was indeed possible even amid uncertainty's embrace moving forward. As I reflected on the events that had unfolded within our family, I realized that this experience had imparted valuable lessons about communication, trust, and the complexities of familial relationships. Growing up in a blended family had always come with its own set of challenges, but witnessing that moment in the garage pushed me to confront issues that had lingered beneath the surface for far too long. First and foremost, I learned the importance of open communication within families. Before the incident, my instinct was to avoid uncomfortable topics, believing that silence would preserve harmony. Yet, I discovered that unaddressed feelings often fester and grow, leading to misunderstandings and emotional distance. The conversations we finally had after weeks of tension revealed how much we were all struggling with our emotions, how Lily felt trapped in navigating her relationship with Dad while wanting to maintain her own identity. Likewise, Dad was wrestling with his role as a father in this new dynamic. By choosing to communicate openly, we were able to bridge gaps and restore a sense of connection that had been disrupted. Trust emerged as another crucial theme during this journey. Observing Lily's subtle shifts in behavior around Dad made me acutely aware of how fragile trust can be, especially among siblings. I found myself questioning whether Lily felt safe confiding in me about her feelings or if she perceived me as an ally or a threat. This realization prompted me to recognize the importance of building trust not just between myself and my stepsister but also within our entire family unit. Trust is earned through vulnerability. It requires us to express our fears and insecurities without fear of judgment. The incident also highlighted how unexpected behaviors from loved ones could signal deeper struggles beneath the surface. Initially, I dismissed Lily's odd reactions as typical teenage angst or rebellion against her circumstances. However, witnessing her discomfort in the garage opened my eyes to the fact that everyone grapples with their emotions differently. What may seem like aloofness could actually be a protective mechanism against vulnerability. This insight allowed me to approach my relationships with greater empathy and compassion. As we all began navigating these complexities together, I noticed a palpable shift in our family dynamics. The barriers that had once separated us felt less daunting. Laughter returned more easily during meals and gatherings as our shared experiences forged new connections among us. We began making an effort to engage one another on deeper levels, asking about each other's days, sharing thoughts on books or movies we enjoyed together, simple acts that slowly rebuilt our familial bond. However, while things improved significantly after those tough conversations, I recognized that healing is not linear. It involves ups and downs along the way. There were still moments when tension resurfaced unexpectedly, frustrations over chores left undone, or miscommunications flaring up during discussions about plans, but now they were met with understanding rather than defensiveness. This journey also encouraged me to reflect on my role within this blended family structure more critically. Each member brought unique perspectives shaped by their individual histories, a realization that inspired me to cultivate patience toward our differences rather than viewing them as barriers to unity. Learning to embrace those differences instead became integral in forging a richer tapestry within our household. Ultimately, this experience reinforced my belief in resilience, the resilience found within families willing to confront their struggles rather than shy away from them. It takes courage not only to express one's feelings but also to listen actively when others share theirs. Such openness creates pathways for understanding where once there were only shadows. While we may never completely eliminate the complexities inherent in any family dynamic, especially one shaped by blending different backgrounds, I've come to understand that embracing those complexities leads us closer together rather than apart. Therein lies an opportunity for growth, a chance for each of us individually and collectively as a family unit to evolve toward healthier patterns rooted firmly in love and trust. As I looked ahead toward what lay beyond this summer filled with revelations, a commitment towards fostering honest dialogue among ourselves seemed paramount going forward. An unwavering promise we would uphold even amid unpredictable storms life might throw at us next.